Hey YouTubers, it's Jack from cruisecasinomafia.com. Today's going to be an interesting video. I believe it's probably going to end up being a series of videos. So lately we've been doing a lot of roulette on this channel, and only because of the fact that we've been so busy behind the scenes actually doing lots and lots of Baccarat testing, simulations for lots of other things. So I thought today we would take a step back from the roulette systems, and we have a lot of new subscribers. And I have a feeling that a lot of the subscribers to the channel are coming here at the moment, or at least lately, from the roulette side. And maybe when we start doing more Baccarat videos, some of these people may get a little lost in the shuffle. Because it's not a game, and frankly, it's not a game that I played. So I started playing and being obsessed with the math and system play for casino gaming back in the late 80s, early 90s. And my adventure started with craps, and then rolled into roulette. So Baccarat was not a game that was very popular, at least in the United States and where I learned how to play, which was in the Bahamas. Since I lived in Florida, we would take these little junket trips to the Bahamas, which was like a half hour, 45 minutes away, since we didn't have casinos in Florida at that time. So Baccarat was a new game for me, and I'm sure it's a new game for many other people. So instead of just throwing another Baccarat system at you for people that are not as comfortable or familiar, I decided to start doing kind of a tutorial, but a little bit more than that. I don't want to just do another how do you play Baccarat series of videos. I want to make sure that you get something more out of it. So basically what we're going to do here is, as we're teaching people the nuances of Baccarat, we're also going to be busting myths. And the reason I'm saying that is because so many of the videos that are on YouTube, and some of these channels have a big following, the problem is you're really not learning the reality of Baccarat. What you're learning is the system of the day, the system of the week, and slapping a martingale double up progression on it to make it look really great in a 15-minute video. And I'm sorry to bust that myth, but that's exactly what's happening. Not all channels, but that's exactly what's happening on YouTube. You know, everything looks great in a 15-minute video that you could double yourself out of. But when you get into those troubles in the real casino, a 15-minute magical get yourself back in profit video doesn't really work out so well. So we're going to talk about that. So in this video, this is going to be part one. Anybody who is nervous about the game of Baccarat, who's only played roulette or craps or maybe even blackjack, this should be a starter video for you guys. But if you are a Baccarat player, I think there's little tidbits I'm going to be able to give you guys in these videos that are going to open up your eyes. Now, with that being said, I'm going to be honest, as always, on these videos. This is a public YouTube channel, okay? We have a private membership at cruisecasinomafia.com, which is strictly information for private members that want to take their game to another level, that want to turn the casino into a long-term, consistent money-generating opportunity. So I have to be very careful here for many, many reasons, and we'll talk about them as the video goes on. But I am going to drop tidbits of information to you guys that you're going to need to know. But I'm also going to state along the way in these videos that there are things I cannot say on these videos on YouTube that are available to our private members. And right now we're running a lifetime discounted membership fee. And I'm going to give you a promo to get an extra $50 off. And that's Mafia, spelled out the number 50, Mafia 50, to get an additional $50 off. So I don't want anybody to feel like these are teaser videos and I'm not giving you information. There's going to be a lot of information, but there are things I can state And there are things that I cannot state on these videos because it's not okay to do that in a public forum, as well as some other reasons that I have to keep close to the vest. Promises made, and I certainly stick to my promises and make sure that I do the right thing. So I want to get you guys on the right track. That's the bottom line with these videos. And I think you're going to get a lot out of them. So let's start with the game itself. So Baccarat is probably one of the easiest games in the casino to play, the actual game mechanics, because there's only 3 bets that can be made in Baccarat, right? Tie, banker, player. We never have any kind of systems that are utilizing ties. There are systems I've seen from other people. I don't believe in them. I don't think that they really work as well. I don't think they're long-term winners. That's for you to make your own decision. So the only thing that our mechanical play and our systems and methodologies do in regards to the bet selection is whether you are not making a bet, right? That is one of your choices when you're sitting at the table, is to not make a bet based on other parameters that we can talk about, or to make a bet on banker, or to make a bet on player. Okay, now, the difference between Baccarat, let's talk about this for a minute. The difference between Baccarat and other games is that you are also not making any decisions. This is not blackjack. It's played with cards, but it is not blackjack. You are not playing a you're not making a decision once you've done your bet selection. There is no other decision to make. The dealer actually is playing the game for you. So let's just take a quick look at this so you can understand what I mean. So if we make a bet, if our bet selection, and we'll talk about that in a minute, has a bet on banker, that's all we're doing is, that's our 2 decisions are what to bet and how much to bet. And that's it, right? So we decided our bet selection, or our guess, was on banker. And we put our money on banker. Well, the dealer throws the cards out, right? Let me just set that up. Dealer throws the cards out, and they deal the player hand and the banker hand, okay? We have no decisions to make. The rules are concrete, and the dealer is throwing the cards out, okay? So let's make that decision right now. So you're either not betting on this hand, or you're betting on banker, or you're betting on player, and you're making a decision as to how many chips you're putting out on banker or player, all right? So now let's talk about what the game actually is without getting too complicated, all right? The rules are very, very simple, all right? There are cards that are provided to the player and the banker. There are 2 cards dealt out to the player hand and the banker hand, all right? Based on what the value of those cards are, the player can get an additional card in some instances, and the banker can get an additional card in some instances. If you want to know those exact rules, you can go on the internet to find out. I don't want this video to get that complicated. But let's just say that the way that this game was created is that the banker has a slight edge, all right? So the banker is allowed to get a 3rd card in scenarios that the player is not. So there is a slight edge to the banker in this game. That's also the reason why that you're paying a vig when you play on the banker and win, okay? You're giving back a tiny bit. So it's not exactly, it is an even money scenario for the most part. When you win on player, you're winning. If you have $10, you're winning 10. You're not winning exactly $10 in banker. They take a little bit of a cut, a tiny little percentage of the money, because you are taking advantage, just like the casino, of those premium rules that favor the banker slightly. Over time, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of results, that little edge doesn't really equate to much in the span of things in regards to what we believe, right? What we do. But we do have to understand that there is a slight edge, and the rules are slightly different for banker versus player. All right? So let's just keep that in mind. All right, I'm not going to get any more into the rules of Baccarat because they don't matter. Because the only thing that matters is which one we're betting on and how much we're betting. All right, so now let's take a look at what we call the scoreboard. All right, let's take a look at that. So every casino that I've ever been to has this. Okay, this is a board, right? This board here is a visualization of the results, like an electronic scoreboard. Now, I keep my own score, quote unquote, the results on my own custom-made scorecards, which we provide in many of our private systems to our members when we give them one of our private systems. But you can get them for free in most casinos. It's basically just a graph sheet, right? We do them custom because some of our systems require you to keep track of different things, so we make it easier. So let's talk about the scoreboard. There are multiple different things here. These are multiple visualizations of the same thing, the results. The two that we use the most, like most people, is this main board and then the bead road. So let me just throw out a bunch of results here so you can see a better visualization of what these look like. Okay, let's just get a bunch of results out. I don't really care what they are. All right, and I don't care about the bet on banker either. It doesn't really matter. All right, let's throw a few more out. Let's do 2 more, and I think that'll be a good visualization. Okay, all right, so let's go back to the board. All right, so what we're seeing here is a visualization of what happened, okay, in the results. When you see only one in a row like this, that means that it was basically a chop, what we would normally call a chop, and that means that it's jumping. And what that means is you can have banker, player, banker, player, banker, player. That's a chop. It means we're having ones, or they're called ones. There's no repeaters. Does that make sense? There's no repeaters. Now in this row, you have 3 in a row, and that's the way we visualize when there's a repeater. So red is a banker. So what this is showing you, the visualization, is that there were 3 bankers in a row. So let's see what the next hand would look like. Okay, that's another banker. So now you see how when there's a repeater, it stays in the same row. When we get to the end of this row, right, and if it still repeats, you're going to start making a right-hand turn, and it's going to show down here, right? It's going to make a right-hand turn. So let's do a few more, and then I'm going to show you what the other visualization is. Okay, we got a player. All right, you see how it now jumped, right? So the pattern broke. The pattern broke. We had a pattern here of 4 in a row bankers, and now we just jumped over here. We hopped to a player bet, to a player result. And if the next one is a banker, it would show up here. But if we do get another player, it's going to show up as a second here, or a 2, right? A row of 2. All right. So that should be easy enough to understand. So when you look at this, if you look at a whole shoe, you're going to see streaks or sticks of the same thing, and you're going to see chops, right? Which is a player, banker, player, banker, player, banker. Okay. However, you're also going to see various sizes of these streaks. You're going to see 2s, which some people call terrible 2s. You're going to see streaks of 3, 4. You may even see streaks of 6, 7, 8, right? All right. So that's what the big board looks like. All right. Now this is the bead road. This is the same thing as this, but a different visualization. So let's make sure we understand what this is showing. All right. And many of our private systems will utilize this bead road as well as the regular big road. All right. And you'll see this on YouTube from many people as well, that their systems will utilize the bead road. So the bead road doesn't jump like this. The bead road simply gives you 6 results consecutively, then it goes back to the top 6 results consecutively, and it goes across. All right. Now, how many results are usually in a single Baccarat shoe? A single Baccarat shoe usually has between 70 to 82 or 83 results. All right. Just so you guys know, it's something like that. And that counts the ties, the players, and the bankers. So that's every result that comes out. It's normally somewhere between that 72 to 82 result range, somewhere in that range. All right. So what is this then? And what makes this different, the Bead Road? The Bead Road gives us 6 in a row. And we're still using colors, right? We're still using colors here. The green means that there was a tie, by the way, right? A tie on this scoreboard is shown with a little slash through it, right? Okay, so let's take a look. Let's take a look at this. All right, so by the way, they don't all do this, but the red, it was the first result. That was a banker. And then the slash means the next result was a tie. All right, that's a little confusing. That's the way they do it on this simulator. Okay, so here we go. So let's look at the Bead Road. So here we had a banker, then we had a tie, then we had a player, right? Then we had a player, and then we had our streak, just like here, our streak of bankers. But here we finished with the 6, right? Always 6, and then it moved back up here, all right? And the reason that some people use the Bead Road, this gets into strategy. There's many systems that you will find that utilize the visualization of the Bead Road, all right? So now you should have a fairly good understanding of the game of Baccarat, right? So that's all we're doing here. If you knew nothing else, forget about systems and methodologies. If you sat down at the table, you would simply take a look at this, and for whatever reason, whether it's a guess or anything else, you would make your decision. 2 decisions. 1, are you going to play the next hand? 2, actually 3 decisions, I'm sorry. Are you going to play the next hand? Number 2, which one are you going to play on? Are you going to bet that the next one is a banker or a player? And then the third decision that you're making is how many chips are you going to be putting out here, right? All right, so we take our chip, we put it on player. Actually, so let's just pretend like we're looking at this, right? So basically what we're looking at here is we had a streak of bankers. It went to the chop, right? It bounced to the other side, right, to a player. So now your decision, if you were using the big road, is the chop going to continue, or are we going to now jump back into some form of a streak? So we'll bet that the chop continues here, and that's strictly on a guess, right? That's strictly on a guess. So we're going to be betting then that the next result is a banker, right? So we made that decision. We are going to bet. We now made the decision to bet on banker, and we're going to decide just to bet $5 out here, all right? So let's take a look and see what happens. And this time, well, we're not going to do that. We'll just go ahead and let the dealer deal the cards. And by the way, I think I left out one big thing. The winning hand, banker or player, is determined by the adding up of the cards to determine who has the higher hand or closer to 9. If you go over 9, it's a 0, right? It's a 0. So that doesn't count. So with the perfect hand or the natural is a 9, right? So in this situation, the banker ended up with a 7, right? Because the 5 and the 5 end up being a 10, which is over. And then the next card was a 7. So this is a 7, okay? The kings and the 10s are 10s, right? All right, so here you go. So this ends up being a 1, all right? And again, you can learn how they add up the cards by looking on the internet to determine how they add up the cards. But you don't have to do anything. That's the point. The dealer does this for you. You're only making the decision here that we talked about. So here the banker won, right? The banker won. All right, so let's go back. So we won, right? Because we said that it was going to continue to chop, right? See how that happens there? It's going to continue to chop. All right, so you guys understand the way that the actual game mechanics work, right? Very, very simple game. There's not a lot of thinking involved here. So the next thing is, if you're going to do more than guess in this game, okay? If you're going to do more than guess in this game, and if you're going to take this seriously, and you're going to look at it like we do, and our objective is to make money, right? Our objective is to make money, which means that we have a systematic set of rules in place to determine several things. So in this video, I'm not going to get into money management, which is how much money are we betting, or how many units are we betting when we make a bet. All right, we're going to leave that for the second part of this series. So now that you understand the game of Baccarat, the next question is, how do we determine whether we're betting? And if we are betting, what are we betting on, banker or player? So that's called bet selection, right? Bet selection, which is our first component in what we would call a methodology that some people call a system, right? So an overall system or concept has to have several components. So the first component that we're going to discuss is bet selection, all right? Now, I'm going to give you a few different bet selections. There are multiple bet selections. There are hundreds and hundreds of books that have been written in the last 30, 40, 50 years on this game that claim to have the ultimate bet selection, all right? And all the YouTubers will give you tons and tons of their holy grail systems that tell you what to bet on, banker or player. I'm not going to jump the gun, and I'm not going to give you my philosophy on that in this video. So basically, we want to open the door and take you through this slowly, all right? Now, many of you have seen these before, so I'm going to just give you a few of them, okay? Just to whet your appetite and to understand that there's multiple different ways to make the decision, rule-based decision, not guessing, a rule-based decision that makes it easy for you to determine what your next, where you place your next bet, okay? Called bet selection. Now, let's go through a few of these before we end this initial video. So obviously, okay, the easiest bet selection you can have is to only bet one way the entire shoe, right? So what does that look like? That looks like this. We're not determining anything on bet selection. We're always going to bet banker, right? And we win. And our next bet is on banker. And we lose, right? And we continue to just simply bet the same place every single time through the entire shoe, right? And you can bet banker only, and you can bet player only through the whole shoe, right? Now, the only difference is that when you bet banker only, you are going to pay that little vig every time that you win. And again, for our purposes today, it doesn't matter. There are even certain games in certain casinos where it's commission free, meaning that you can bet banker without paying the additional commission. But for today's lesson or video, it doesn't matter. We're simply talking about bet selection. So the easiest thing you can do is bet banker through the whole shoe or bet player through the whole shoe. So let's talk about that for a second. These are as close to 50-50 flipping a coin as you're going to get. They're not exactly 50-50, right? Because there's the rules on banker favor banker slightly over player. But it's fairly nominal, all right? So for our purposes, let's just assume that this is 50-50, all right? The second thing is that if you do as many shoes, and there's tons of recorded shoes, and we give these to our members. We have thousands of shoes that you can use for testing that are pre-recorded shoes. And when you look at these shoes, thousands and thousands of shoes, it's the same as flipping a coin, which means that the smaller the sampling, the more deviation that you're going to see. So if you play just 10 results of this, and let's take a look right now, right? We have 11 results here with one tie. Okay, with one tie. So just forget about the 11. But look at the 10 results here. There were 7 bankers and 3 players, right? That doesn't sound like a coin flip. Well, it is a coin flip, basically. Because if we finish this shoe and we have 65, 70 results that are banker player, there are shoes that are going to come out where there's more bankers than players, and some shoes are going to come out that there's more players than bankers. But the more simulations that you do, it's just like flipping a coin 10 times versus 100 times versus 10,000 times. The more that you flip the coin, the closer that the deviation comes back to the norm, and you're going to get very close to a 50-50 split, okay? So if you're going to play all banker or all player, in the short term, there's going to be tremendous deviation, not tremendous, but there's going to be deviation. It's not going to be a 50-50. It's not that, it doesn't, statistics don't work that way, okay? But over time, it will play out that those giant player shoes that have a massive amount more players than bankers or vice versa will slowly come back to the mean, all right? So that's one of the simplest bet selections you can have, banker only or player only, all right? So let's talk about a few other bet selections that people like to use that are very, very simple bet selections, okay? So let's go on to the next one, all right? The next one that a lot of people like to use, and again, I'm gonna keep these first few using just the big board, okay? We're gonna make it easy. So if you're keeping track, or if you're in the casino and they have the big board, the electronic board, what some people like to do is do follow the last, right? Follow the last, right? So whatever the last one was. So here, this is a player. So you're going to continue to bet player. You're going to bet player next, right? But what happens when it switches to banker? Well, now the last is banker, and you're going to bet banker. So you're constantly changing your bet just to continue to bet last. What does that actually feel like? What does that feel like? It feels like you're looking for a trend, right? You're looking for a trend. So if you're betting whatever the last one was, follow the last, that means that in this streak here, you would have won multiple bets, right? You would have won these 3 bets because you would have continued to bet banker. But what happens when you do follow the last, there's always a negative, right? There's always a mirror side of every bet selection. There's no perfect bet selection. Hint, 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 okay? So the problem with follow the last, not the problem, but its downside is the chops. So if this continues to chop, you're betting banker, then it's player. You're betting player, then it's banker. And that's how you get hurt, simply with the bet selection of following the last. Of course, you could also bet, another bet selection is opposite of the last, okay? Opposite of the last. So here is a player. So our next bet would be banker. Okay? So that's opposite of the last. All right? And the next one that I'm going to show you that a lot of people like to use is second to last. Okay? So what does that mean? It's not as confusing as it sounds. This just came out, right? The player. This is the last. Right? This was the last result. But instead of playing the last result, you're going to play the second to last, which is this. So if you're playing second to last, this would be a banker bet, right? This is a banker bet next, right? Now, what if you were here, right? Forget about this. Let's say this was the last one. This was a banker bet. So what's the second to last? The second to last, right, is here. I'm sorry, you know what I just did? I just screwed that up royally. Okay, I just screwed that up. So let's do that again. Let's do that again. I made a mistake there, talking and explaining at the same time. So here's the second to last is here. All right, here. All right, so this is the last, right? this is the last, and this is the second to last. All right, second to last. So if we're playing second to last, it's not the last one here, it's the second to last. All right? Does everybody understand second to last? All right, kind of screwed that up a little bit. So second to last. All right, second to last. All right. All right, so that's the point is, basically, there are multiple different ways of determining your bet. Okay, so let's take one more look. Let's take one more look. Actually, you know what? I did make a mistake there. So let's go back and correct it. Let's go back and correct it. So this, I guess I got confused because I was talking about two different things at once. This is the follow the leader, right? So if we're betting the follow the last, we're betting whatever came out last. Second to last is going to be, is going to be here. Okay? So this, if you're doing second to last, you're betting banker. Okay? This bet would be a banker bet. All right? Does everybody understand that so I don't screw it up royally? So here you're betting a banker. Okay? Let me give you another example so I don't make a total mistake, right? So if you were here, if this didn't come out yet, this was the last thing that came out, second to last would be here, okay, which is a banker, right? So you would be betting banker. All right, so that's second to last. You can do opposite of second to last, right? You can do the same thing but opposite of that. That's another bet selection, all right? Now, let's get a little bit more complicated in our bet selection. Let's show you something else. What if we were using the visualization itself as our bet selection? And a lot of systems do this. A lot of systems do this. All right? So some systems are looking for the chops. Other systems are looking for the streaks, right? So let me show you one that is pretty interesting, okay? So we're going to play this right now to give you an example. This bet selection is pretty cool, all right? So what happens is we're only looking for the chops, right? The switches, all right? We're not looking for the streaks. So in this bet selection, we call it a 2-1 and a 3-1, right? And this works pretty cool. I like this bet selection a lot. Some people on YouTube like it as well. People that actually play for a living. They're not just doing 15-minute videos. So this is a bet selection that's kind of fun. So what you're doing is you're waiting for a 2 scenario, right? A 2 scenario. So forget that this was here, and you're going to bet for the bump, for the chop, and you would have won here. So here are 2 bankers. You would wait for this scenario to arise, and then you would bet for the bump or the chop, and you would basically bet player, and you would win. All right? But now we're in a chop, so you would not bet again. So the trigger for this is 3 in a row or 2 in a row. Okay? So you're betting on the 3 to make a 1, or the 2 to make a 1. And there are other rules to play in that system, but I'm just trying to get your brains working. So you're not betting on chops as they're in the middle of the chop. You're only waiting for the break. So basically a great shoe for you is 3 and 1, right? 2 and 1, 2 and 1, 3 and 1, 2 and 1, okay? And a lot of shoes look like that. There's other rules in that system, but I just want to open your eyes to different bet selections today. All right, so now let's switch gears real briefly, and let's take a good look. Let's take a good look at the Bead Road, all right? And we're going to do a few Bead Road bet selections, all right? So a lot of the Bead Road bet selections work off of the straight visualization that's going on here, okay? Straight visualization. I'm going to give you 3 of the ones that people use on a regular basis, all right? And these are fun to play, right? They're fun to play. It makes it feel more like a game, all right? Whether that works or not is a conversation for the end of this video, all right? So here we go. So what some people will do is they will use, and there's a guy on YouTube right now that swears by this bet selection, all right? I'm not going to make any comments whether this bet selection is the holy grail or not. He does it on a regular basis, and this is his way of playing the game. And there's nothing wrong with that. What he does is he waits for 6 results. There's no betting. You're waiting for 6 results, right? And then what he calls this is the shoe pattern, all right? It's the shoe pattern. And what he then does is bet that exact pattern on every column coming out next, all right? Now, I'll give you a little caveat. He's not betting that this exact pattern is going to happen every single time. He's only looking for one win in each column based on using this pattern. And that gets a little bit more into money management, money manipulation, bet progressions, and we're not going to talk about that in this video, all right? But I want you to know that what he's doing is using the first line or column in the bead road, and that is in stone to be utilized going forward. Okay, going forward. He's betting that that exact pattern is going to come out. Now, let me give you a little secret here. Okay, absolutely 100%. There is no difference between betting the exact pattern to get a win or betting the opposite of that quote-unquote shoe pattern to get a win. I'll say it again. If this is our bet selection, what he's doing is now betting for the exact same thing to happen in the one next to it. You see what I'm saying? Until he gets a win. All right? What I'm telling you is there is absolutely no mathematical difference if you did the same thing and bet the opposite happening here, because we already know that this is basically a flip of a coin 50-50. So this is simply giving you the bet selection going forward. And there is absolutely no difference between quote unquote this being the shoe pattern and the opposite of the shoe pattern getting a win in each column. Okay? So that's called the shoe pattern if you want to use what that guy uses, what that channel uses. And that's perfectly fine. All right? All right? There's a lot more to that we'll go over in the next video as to, the play of some of these bet selections. I'm just opening your brain to different bet selections that people use. All right? Second bet selection that uses the bead road, right, is that you're waiting for something more to happen before you look for the mirror or the no mirror. Now, I just used 2 words without explaining them. So let's go on and talk about what a mirror or a no mirror looks like. Do you see here that if you were betting for the mirror, the exact same thing to happen, you would have been betting for a banker and you would have won, right? Forget about the tie here. We don't bet on ties, so there would never be a bet here for a mirror or a no mirror. But now take a look at the third row. This is a player in row 1. So if we were betting for the mirror, the same thing to happen, we would lose here. Okay, you see that's a no mirror? And you see here we'd be betting for the same thing and it's a mirror. So there are bet selections that look for a trigger and then jump in for the opposite to happen. Okay, and we have a system that we implement that we give to our members that does the very same thing. I'm not going to go over the system because it's a private system, but you understand that sometimes you can be betting for the mirror and sometimes you're betting for the no mirror. All right, and those are triggers that tell you in your bet selection whether you're looking for a mirror or a no mirror. So that's another way that people use the bead road, all right? So there are multiple other ways to use this bead road, and it is a lot of fun to use as a bet selection, I have to tell you, all right? I have to tell you, it definitely is. There's also ways of continuing to reevaluate. So what some people do is they don't get as many bets off in the shoe, and what they're doing is they're reconfiguring their bet selection. So this row is telling them what to do for this row, right? Whether you're doing the mirror, no mirror deal, whether you're doing the shoe pattern, the whole pattern, and then this row, they're not betting again. They're letting this row come in. So what happens is sometimes they're betting every other row of the bead road. And that's interesting as well because you're limiting how many bets you're making in a shoe. So that's pretty fascinating too. So the point is this. There are multiple bet selections, okay? Multiple triggers that you can use to determine what to do if you're going to make a bet and where you're going to bet, right? So now I'm going to tell you the big truth, right? We said that this was going to be about myth busting. And we're going to end the video with this statement, all right? I'm going to give you a truth. Whether you believe it or not, that's up to you. I do thousands of simulations with this game. Most of the people you're watching on YouTube do 15-minute videos that claim that they can make money doing the same thing over thousands of shoes. That ends up not being the case, okay? So here's the truth. The truth is you may like playing banker only. You may have an affinity for playing player only. You may like the bead road and playing a bead road bet selection, okay? Now there's a third type of bet selection that doesn't just look at this or look at this. And let me just give you a quick example of that before I make my next statement, okay? So basically, the third type of bet selection is pattern recognition or following a pattern, all right? I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole for this first video, but I'm going to tell you that some people will only like to follow a pattern, all right? That pattern can be 3 results. That pattern can be 5 results. I have a video on this channel that shows me playing one of those patterns, a pattern of 5, right? A pattern of 5. There are patterns of 3, there are patterns of 5, there's a pattern of 2. You can repeat those patterns. So let's say that we're playing, and a lot of YouTubers love to play patterns. So they can play banker, banker, player, banker, banker, right? They can play banker, player, banker. And they simply continue to repeat that pattern, all right? And that's what their bet selection is. There are multiple different ways of playing patterns, all right? You can do a pattern that doesn't tell you to play player or banker. You can do a pattern that just tells you whether you're playing the opposite of what came out or the same, right? So we have a system that uses something called SOS, same, opposite, same. All right, so what does that mean, right? What does that mean? If you're playing same, that means you're going to bet the same thing that just came out. If you're playing opposite, it means you're just going to play the opposite of what just came out. And we have an entire system with money management based on what we call the SOS system, right? We actually don't want the SOS to come out. What we want in that system is we want the S's to continue or the opposites to continue. Because when the SOS continues, that means we basically flip-flopped, all right? I'm not going to get into it, but let's just say that there's multiple ways to play patterns. There are lots of people that believe that they have a pattern that can beat the game of Baccarat, right? A five result pattern, a 3 result pattern, a 4 result pattern, whatever it may be, all right? There is no pattern, single pattern that beats Baccarat, all right? And that's going to lead us right now into the end of this video and a conclusion to this long-winded way of showing you different ways of doing bet selections. You are going to, like everybody that plays this game or practices this game or loves to do simulations, there's no doubt about it. Psychologically, you are going to come to your own conclusion that you like playing a specific type of bet selection, whether that's banker only, player only, whether that's playing a pattern repeating, whether that's using a bead road system, whatever it may be. Okay? And that's perfectly fine because it's your game, you're playing, not me. But here is, and I have my favorites too, by the way. All right? But I'm going to tell you something. That all the videos you're watching on YouTube, including mine, there is no bet selection that's magically better than another. That is the holy grail. There is no bet selection that simply wins by itself. Every single bet selection has an opposite side that makes it lose. Like the mirror, no mirror. Like the chop system, or like a streak system, or a pattern system. There's always the opposite of the pattern happening, which means you're going to lose every one of those bets if the opposite of your pattern comes in. So the bottom line is, this is not a video to be negative. This is a video to open your eyes and to understand that you should always play different bet selections to determine what fits what you like to play, okay? And you do not have to stick with one bet selection forever. You can play shoe number 1 banker only, but you can play shoe number 2 opposite of the last result, right? No one says you have to play the same bet selection and stick to it for the rest of your life. Now, I will tell you that flip-flopping in the middle of a shoe is utterly ridiculous. Whatever your bet selection is, you have to stick to it for the shoe. That is definitely a rule that I would implement without a doubt, okay? Unless your system indicates otherwise, all right? So the bottom line is every bet selection can work and every bet selection will fail. So the answer is, continue to evaluate bet selections, but know that the money that you make or that you lose in a single shoe, as well as over time a series of shoes, 25, 50, 100 shoes, or a lifetime of playing this game, will not be determined by your bet selection. It will be determined by the way that you manipulate your bet amounts. Okay, let me say that again. Bet selection will not determine long-term winning and losing. It can help you. It can be your friend. But the way that you win over a series of shoes is how and when and what you place as a bet. Okay? So continue to watch YouTube videos, continue to evaluate bet selections, and some of them are a hell of a lot more fun to play than others. All right? The only other thing I will tell you is this. Some bet selections will bet every single result in the shoe. Some bet selections will take a no bet, as I call it, which means you're not going to bet every single bet in the shoe. And there are other bet selections that jump in and jump out using various triggers, okay? Obviously, that makes a huge impact, all right? But I'm going to tell you that the straight bet selection itself, if you played it straight out, without any other rules whatsoever, is not going to make a huge impact. Now, I learned this not playing Baccarat or even roulette or craps. I learned this by doing thousands and thousands and thousands of trades using professional analysis, charting and analysis to trade Forex, options, and stocks. Okay, everybody had their holy grail indicator. And what I learned back then is that some indicators are much better than others. But at the end of the day, what mattered the most was how much I put on each trade. When did I stop my losses? How did I handle my wins? That's what made me a winner or a loser in the financial industry. And it's exactly the same here. So have fun watching videos, have fun testing bet selections, but understand that no matter what anybody tells you, the bet selection is a small piece of a much bigger puzzle. And we're going to talk about the other components of those puzzles and give you a few ideas and thoughts. Some of the ideas and thoughts and conclusions I'm not going to be able to give you publicly on YouTube. That's just the way that it works because we are running a private group, right? CruiseCasinoMafia.com gives you the bigger picture, puts some of the puzzle pieces together with different individual private systems. So I cannot give you the whole game plan. But what I want to do is open your minds to what it takes to win. And if you choose to join our private group, you will certainly get your eyes open more to the winning and the losing strategies and methodologies and money management that we're utilizing. Okay? But the hope here is that I can stop people from absolutely believing things that are not true, and also opening your eyes to thinking a different way to potentially give you a real chance of lessening your losses. Notice I didn't say winning more, because this is a 50-50 game, basically. The wins are there. The only thing you have to do in the stock market, in options, in Forex trading, or crypto is to lessen your losses. If you learn that, you've learned more than 95% of the people that try to make money in anything in life. Wins are automatically going to be there, unless you're the absolute unluckiest person in the world. The only thing you need to do is learn how to handle the losses. Because if you limit your losses, you're giving yourself the best chance of coming out a winner. And that's all I try to do in life. Okay, so the people that show you that they made $100,000 over 3 months of trading options or anything else, whether it's in the casino or not, the end result is not the answer. If they don't give you the full look at the volatility that took place during those 3 months, how low did your bankroll go? What were the size of the bets that you had to make? Did you lose your bankroll at any time during the 3 months, or your capital if you're in the stock market? Then you don't have all the puzzle pieces. Anybody can tell you what they made at the end. That's not where the knowledge comes from. You need to know a lot more than the fact that I played Baccarat or roulette for 15 minutes on YouTube and made some money. That doesn't translate into the real world. What translates into the real world is a series of rules that handle every possibility that can potentially happen to you when you're doing this over 10 shoes, 15, 50, 100, 1,000 shoes, or 1,000 trades, 500 trades. It doesn't matter which world we're talking about. So I'm going to try to open your eyes to that in the next few videos. I know this has been a long video, but I wanted anybody that doesn't understand the game of Baccarat to start at the same place that we are. All right? Understand the game, understand the scoreboard, and understand the various methods that are used strictly for bet selection. In the next video, we're going to talk about math. And by the way, I'm not a big math guy, okay? So, but it's important. It's important because that's the way that you're going to become a successful anything, right? In the stock market or here, you have to understand the math behind winning and the math behind losing. And we'll take it from there. So with that being said, we'll see you on the second myth-busting video for the game of Baccarat. Take it easy. Have a great day, and we'll see you on part 2.